You want to know the strangest thing I ever saw outside a palace? It wasn't a crime. It wasn't a scandal. It was a little girl pointing her finger at a stranger and screaming for a guard to attack her, and the guard doing the exact opposite of what everyone expected. Let me back up. This happened outside the Hollowgate Palace in the small kingdom of Veloria. Now most of you have never heard of it, and that's fine. It's one of those tiny old kingdoms tucked between bigger countries, the kind that survives on tourism and tradition and not much else. But their royal guard, famous. People come from all over just to watch them stand there, still as statues in those tall gray bearskin hats and long coats the color of storm clouds. I was there on a Tuesday, late morning. The sky was that flat English gray you get in autumn, not raining yet but thinking about it. There's a smell near Hollowgate, wet stone, horse, roasted nuts from a cart down the road. You never forget it. The crowd was thick that day. Tourists pressed up against the low iron railings, phones out, everyone trying to get the guard to blink. There's always someone doing that, waving, making faces. The guards never move. That's the whole point. The one on duty near the east gate that morning was a young man, tall. I remember his jaw was set so hard it looked carved. His name, I found out later, was Corporal Ellis Vane, 26 years old, 6 years in the guard, the kind of man who'd stand through a thunderstorm and not shift his weight. And near him, running around the courtyard where the public were allowed, was a royal child. Princess Aurelie, the little one. She couldn't have been more than 7. Bright coat, patent shoes, a nanny trailing a few steps behind, always watching. Aurelie had a younger brother too, Prince Tobin, maybe 4, chubby-cheeked, wobbling around the way small kids do. Nobody was worried about anything. It was just a normal, gray, ordinary day. Then it wasn't. There was a woman in the crowd. I noticed her because she wasn't looking at the guard like everyone else. She was watching the children, just watching. She had a canvas bag over one shoulder and a scarf pulled up, and something about the way she stood, too still, too focused, made the back of my neck prickle. I told myself I was imagining it, people watching plays tricks on you. Little Tobin had wandered close to the railing. He dropped something, a toy, one of those small wooden knights they sell in the gift shop, and it had rolled right up to the woman's feet on the other side of the low barrier. He toddled after it, arms out, laughing the way 4-year-olds do when they don't understand distance or strangers or anything at all. And the woman crouched down. At first it looked kind. She picked up the little wooden knight, smiled at him, held it out. But she didn't give it to him. She held it just out of reach, drawing him closer, one step then another, right up against the gap in the railing where the barrier was lowest. Her other hand had come up out of the canvas bag, and it was moving toward his arm. I want to be honest with you. In that moment I froze. A lot of us did. The human brain is slow when something's wrong. You stand there thinking surely not, surely I'm misreading this, while your gut is screaming. But somebody wasn't frozen. Princess Aurelie, 7 years old, in her bright little coat, she saw it before any adult moved. And she did what a 7-year-old does. She panicked. She got it completely, understandably wrong. She saw the stranger reaching for her baby brother, saw him being pulled toward the railing, and her whole world narrowed to one terrified thought. Someone is taking Tobin. She spun around toward the guard, her face white, and she screamed at the top of her lungs. She attacked my little brother, stop her. And she was pointing. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that made my heart drop into my shoes. She wasn't pointing at the woman with the canvas bag. In her panic, in the chaos of it, she'd spun the wrong way and thrown her arm out toward a completely different person, a young tourist woman standing near the gate, phone still up, filming, who had absolutely nothing to do with any of it. The tourist's face went from a smile to pure horror in half a second. Every head in the crowd whipped toward her. For one awful heartbeat, the whole thing balanced on a knife's edge. A screaming princess, a pointing finger, an innocent woman, and a crowd of 200 people about to believe the wrong thing entirely. Now, you have to understand what a moment like that does to a crowd. 200 people and a royal child screaming, "Stop her, she attacked my brother." That's not a situation anymore. That's a spark near dry grass. I've thought about it a lot since. All it would have taken was one person to grab that innocent tourist. One shout of "Get her." Crowds don't think. Crowds move. And the tourist, this poor young woman, couldn't have been older than 20. She just froze with her phone still up in the air, mouth open, eyes going wide as she felt every stare land on her at once. She started shaking her head. No, no, it wasn't, I didn't, but nobody could hear her over the noise. Her voice just got swallowed. I saw two men near her turn. Big lads. One of them took a step toward her with his jaw tight, and I knew, this was about to go very wrong for someone who'd done absolutely nothing. That's when Corporal Vane moved. 6 years of standing still. 6 years of that iron discipline where you don't flinch, don't turn, don't so much as look at a tourist screaming in your face. And in one instant he broke every bit of it, but not the way you'd think. He didn't charge the tourist. He didn't even look at her. His head had already turned, not toward where the princess was pointing, but toward where she should have been pointing. Toward the woman with the canvas bag. Toward little Tobin, who was now just inches from that gap in the railing with a stranger's hand closing around his wrist. You see, Vane had been standing there all morning. Still as stone, yes, but still doesn't mean blind. He'd clocked that woman the same way I had maybe an hour before I did. He'd watched her watch those children. And when the scream came, he didn't listen to the words. He'd already seen the truth with his own eyes. He came off that post like something released from a spring. I've never seen a big man move that fast. The crowd was so busy staring at the wrong woman that half of them didn't even see him go. He cleared the courtyard in maybe 4 strides, that long gray coat snapping behind him, and he didn't shout, didn't warn, didn't waste a single second on words. He got one arm around Tobin's little body and lifted him clean off his feet, away from the railing, away from that reaching hand, and with the other arm he came down like a gate slamming shut, pinning the woman's wrist against the iron bar before she could pull it back into her bag. She fought him. That's the part that told everyone watching this was real. An innocent person startled by a guard goes limp, goes shocked, says, "What are you doing?" This woman twisted and yanked and tried to get her hand into that canvas bag, and Vane just leaned his whole weight down and held her there and said, very low, very calm, I was close enough to hear it, "Don't move." 2 words, that was all. The nanny reached them a second later, scooping the little prince out of Vane's arm, clutching him to her chest, both of them shaking. And Tobin, bless him, he still didn't understand. He was reaching back over the nanny's shoulder, going, "My night, I want my night." Because to a 4-year-old the whole world was still just about a little wooden toy on the ground. Now here's where it turned. The crowd had followed Vane's movement by then, and all those faces that had been aimed at the poor tourist swung round to the woman pinned against the railing. And people started to see. Because when Vane held her wrist against that bar, her canvas bag had tipped, and something had slid halfway out of it onto the stone. I won't tell you it was a weapon out of a film. It wasn't. It was worse in a quiet way. It was a folded child's coat, not one of theirs, and a length of soft cord and a second scarf. The kind of things you bring when you've planned something. When you've stood outside a palace and watched 2 little children and worked out exactly how close you could get. You could feel it move through the crowd like a cold wind. The gasp. The understanding. The 2 big lads who'd been about to grab the innocent tourist just stopped dead, and one of them went pale as paper because he realized how close he'd come to hurting the wrong person entirely. And the young tourist, the one who'd been wrongly accused, she just sat straight down on the ground and put both hands over her face and cried. Princess Aurelie was still standing where she'd started. 7 years old, arm dropped now, staring at the woman by the railing. And you could see it dawning on her small face that she'd pointed the wrong way. That in the worst moment of her life she'd got it wrong, and screamed at a stranger who'd never done a thing. Her lips started to go. That wobble kids get right before the tears come properly. But before she could fall apart, more guards were coming, 2 of them, quick and quiet, taking the woman off Vane's hands, radios crackling, the whole practiced machinery of the place waking up around a thing that had lasted maybe 15 seconds start to finish. And Corporal Vane, breathing hard now, coat dusty at the elbow, turned around. He didn't go to the crowd. He didn't go to the cameras, and God knows there were 100 of them up by then. He crouched down in front of the shaking, wrong-pointing little princess. He crouched down in front of her, this big man in his gray coat, down on one knee so his eyes were level with hers, and everybody nearby went quiet to watch. Aurelie couldn't look at him. She was staring at her own shoes, both hands twisted up in the front of her coat, and the tears were coming now, fat and silent. She got a few words out between them. I pointed at the wrong lady. I said she did it, and she didn't. I got it wrong. And I braced myself, honestly, because I thought he'd tell her it was fine, brush it off, do the thing adults do where they wave away a child's feeling without really answering it. He didn't do that. He said, and I'll remember this the rest of my life, he said, you did get it wrong. Just like that, plain, he didn't lie to her. But then he said, and it doesn't matter one bit, do you know why? She shook her head, still not looking up. Because you're 7, he said, and you were the only person in this whole courtyard who saw your brother was in trouble. 200 grown adults, and every one of them stood there like statues. Me included for a second. You were the one who made noise. You were the one who did something. Your aim was off. That's all. Pointing's easy to fix. Silence isn't. He nodded over toward Tobin, who was now sitting on the nanny's hip, perfectly content, chewing on the collar of his coat, completely unaware that anything at all had happened to him. Your brother's safe, Vane said, because his big sister shouted. You remember that, not the finger, the shout. And that little girl looked up at him then. First time. Eyes red, cheeks soaked. And she launched herself off her feet and threw both arms around his neck, and this stone-still royal guard, this man famous for never moving a muscle, he just let her. One big hand on the back of her head, held her while she cried it all out into his collar. I looked around. I wasn't the only one wiping my face. That young tourist, the one who'd been wrongly accused, was still on the ground, but someone had crouched beside her now, an older woman, an arm round her shoulders. And when Aurelie finally let go of Vane, the nanny walked her straight over to that tourist. The princess stood in front of her, sniffling, and said sorry. Said it properly. Said, I'm sorry I pointed at you. I was scared. And the tourist, God bless her, she just laughed through her own tears and said it was all right. Love, it was all right. That's the part they didn't show on the news, by the way. The news showed the arrest, the dramatic bit. They never showed the little girl saying sorry to a stranger, or a guard on one knee telling her that being wrong wasn't the same as being useless. They took the woman away. There was a whole thing after, statements, cordons, the gates shut for the afternoon. I heard later she'd done this before in other cities, other crowds. She was known. She'd just never been caught in the act, because catching someone in the act needs someone watching who won't look away. That morning she had 2 people watching who wouldn't. A 7-year-old girl and a guard who'd spent 6 years learning to see everything while looking like he saw nothing. Corporal Vane went back to his post. That's the thing that got me. 20 minutes after all that dust brushed off his coat, he was standing there again, still as stone, jaw set, staring at nothing, like the most exciting thing in his day was the weather. A crowd formed to clap him, and he didn't so much as glance at them. Back to being a statue. Back to the job. But I noticed something. Down by his boot, someone had set the little wooden knight, Tobin's toy, the one that started the whole thing, upright against the base of his post. Nobody moved it. It just stayed there all afternoon, this tiny carved guard standing watch next to the real one. I've thought about that day a lot. We tell kids to be quiet, be still, don't make a fuss, don't point, don't cause a scene, and most of the time that's good advice. But every now and then, the world needs someone to make noise at exactly the wrong-looking moment, even if they get the details wrong, even if they point the wrong way. Because a wrong shout that saves a life beats a polite silence every single time. Aurelie will grow up. She'll forget the tourist's face, probably. She might even forget the guard's name. But I hope she never forgets what he told her on one knee in that gray courtyard. You don't have to be right to be brave. You just have to refuse to stay quiet.